How's it going, everybody? Let's take a look at the pesky JAE connectors on the Harley-Davidson. My name is Ron, and here on this channel I tackle projects of all sizes related to the motorcycles I ride. If you've ever worked with a wiring project on your Harley-Davidson or another motorcycle, you've probably come across these connectors. Today we're looking at the JAE connector, and specifically we're looking at the male connector on the JAE plug. And JAE stands for Japan Aviation Electronics. Some people call these a Molex plug, some people call it a Deutsch connector, but those are really different connectors, and the JAE is a specific type of connector, and that's what I'm looking at today. Now, I've previously worked with these connectors when I routed the wires inside my 8-hanger handlebars. I've done one video on that project, so I'll put a link to that here. I've also got a future video coming out on the license plate relocation bracket and the way that I handled the wiring for the tag light on that project. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be alerted whenever those future videos come out. So what tools you're going to need for working with these connectors? For me, just a safety pin. You can buy a special tool, but I found that the safety pin works great. The paperclip is too soft, but the safety pin has just enough springiness to it and allows you to really work with those connectors well. So if you got a safety pin, you should be good to go. So let me give you some tips on working with these connectors. Be sure to make a diagram of your wires before you start, or take a picture. Whatever works best for you, that way you'll know the order to put the wires back in once you reassemble your connector. You don't want to insert the pin straight into the front of the connector. You want to come in at an angle and slide across the top of that pin that you're trying to release, and then once you feel it stop, you put downward pressure on it. And you'll notice the pin that I use has a red mark on it. And I did that so that you could see how far is too far when you go to insert that pin into the front of the connector. If you insert it all the way to where I have it marked red, that's too far and you're not going to hit the little release mechanism in there that you need to hit. When you get it in the right position at the right angle, it only goes in about 5 millimeters, maybe 3/16 of an inch, something like that. Let's start out with how to orient the plug. So in all the shots that I'm going to show you today, the plug will be oriented in such a way that the wider slots are at the top of that plug or are facing up. So if you take a look at this shot, you can see those wider slots at the top of each one of the pins. Those need to be facing up in order for all of the instructions that I'm going to give you to make sense. So the process I use when I'm ready to actually release one of the wires is I'll hold the wire at the back of the housing with my fingers right up against the back of that plug. And then I'll insert the safety pin at a slightly downward angle, slide across the top of that pin. Once I feel it stop, I'll pull the safety pin down, and while I'm holding that downward pressure on it, I'll also pull outwardly on that wire, and it should release itself from the plug once you apply that pressure towards the back of the plug. And then as you remove that wire from the housing, be sure to check the position of the little metal connector so that when you reinsert it back into the housing, it goes into the same direction, because it has to be that same way in order for it to lock back into the housing. And then when you go to reassemble it, just insert it back into the same position, in the same orientations. So you'll have to insert it through the hole in the back plate of that connector, and then you'll need to push it through the silicone seal. And then after it gets through the silicone seal, it will begin to seat into its actual socket within that connector. And then you'll feel it seat home and sort of click into place. So here it is again. And one more time. Let me slow that down so you can see it in slow motion as well. And once you reassemble the connector, be sure to double check your diagram to make sure you've got the wires in the right order. And of course, take a look at the front of that connector to make sure that you can see the silver of all of the pins that you've reinserted back into the connector, and then give them all a little tug to make sure that they're firmly seated and that they are snapped back into position as they need to be. Some people will tell you that you need to remove the little plastic hinge on that connector in order to work with these. I haven't found that necessary. I've done it both ways, but in doing it multiple times, I found that it's easier just to leave the hinge on the connector, leave the connector fully intact, and then just take the wires out one by one and reinsert them one by one. You'll get a better seal and better integrity for your connection, so you might as well just leave it in place. So as you can see, it's not a difficult process. You just may need to work with it a few times so that you can fine-tune the technique for releasing those pins from the connector. Drop in a comment and let me know if you've worked with these connectors. Have you used this technique or a different technique? I'd love to hear what's worked for you, and I'm sure the rest of the community would appreciate that input as well. If you found this video useful or informational, please hit the thumbs up button and share it with your friends. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be alerted whenever I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next time.